Space for Sale was one of the games being presented at the THQ Nordic showcase last Friday. Even though I'm currently suffering some kind of survival crafting fatigue, how I'd like to call it, I decided to still give it a go. Little info, it is currently on sale on Steam and there's a demo available, which is great. I will link it in the description below. I always prefer publishers and studios to release a demo to check out the game before spending money on it. Now, Space for Sale is in fact very different from what I have expected, but I will elaborate further on this later in the video. As always, what would you do in the first place? What is Space for Sale about? From the description, Space for Sale is pretty simple. You take on contracts to build small colonies on various planets. You gather some basic resources, build a small headquarter, build houses for your clients and some amenities such as a water park. However, if you think you will set up a huge production chain, you're sadly searching for the wrong game. There are only a few resources you can gather and you can refine, at least until now. You know, early access and so. When I say small though, don't get me wrong, you will build up a small settlement in different areas of the planet. Whereas one area could be pretty small, the entire planet does require some logistics and thinking after all. Depends on how you are expanding, of course. Other resources are not there to gather, but to farm by placing a building on the corresponding area. Very much this reminds me a little bit of a puzzle style game where you set buildings on predefined places on the map. Due to these buildings, you will get something I would call resource points. These resource points can then be invested into other buildings again. You already see the crafting and your production chains are very limited, and honestly that is okay when I consider the game is suitable for 6 years olds. Now, when reading the reviews, I find many negative reviews about the description of the game being misleading, not having implemented features which are basically promised. However, the game has been released into early access and the entire point of early access on Steam is to follow the progress while the game develops. If you do not like this principle, you shouldn't buy early access games. I do say, however, the description sounds a little bit bigger than the game currently is. Obviously, Space for Sale shouldn't be a broken mess, which it fortunately isn't. A living roadmap is available and currently for version 0.2 a new planet is announced with a new environment, creatures and assets. At a later point, many of the points will be added which people are criticizing right now. Challenges, progression, upgrades, new types of clients, and so on. From my perspective, there are bits and pieces I really don't like and I wished they would improve. Even for such a simple game, the tutorial phase is sadly not good enough. Yes, I know some people are saying back in my days we had to figure everything out ourselves, and this is rubbish. Many games from back in the days had good tutorials explaining you the basics of the game, and I'm not talking about Pac-Man obviously. What would I expect? More explanation on the controls, a little introduction into the production chain, and I honestly wish your advisor would get some spoken voice lines and not the random noises. Why voice lines, you may ask? From the graphic style, the humor and the setup, the game is obviously for younger audiences in the first place. Having spoken voice lines will lower the barrier to enter the game properly and to figure out what is actually going on. You do not have to read walls of text. Other recommendations I would have other controls of buildings which should be explained a little bit more or should be easier accessible. It took me frustrating 10 minutes to figure out how the refinery works. I knew from my instinct that I had to use it to refine my ores and to build additional buildings. My problem was just, I'll be very honest with you, I didn't figure out that there was one little terminal to access the refinery. Either add a hint in the tutorial which would have helped me, or just make the entire building accessible to its production and crafting menu. Why was it frustrating? When I play a game, the gameplay must flow. As soon as I get stuck, unrest sets in. With a crafting game, this is extra problematic as the game will not be progressing at all if you don't continue. As said, personally, I would say make the entire building accessible and not just the terminal. Makes life easier and should be a simple change. Next point I'd like to address, the game is overly bright even when I turn down brightness. For me personally, it is difficult to play. For others, it might differ of course, so there might be some adjustment on the brightness settings needed. After turning down brightness, I didn't feel big difference. I guess these are the main points that really need to be done in addition to the living roadmap. Brightness, maybe voice actors could be hired with the help of THQ, maybe overthink the description a little bit on Steam. Personally, I wouldn't play much of this game in the meantime, but that's not the fault of Space for Sale. If you really like crafting games and somewhat of management and simulation, Space for Sale is something for you. I'm just burned out of the crafting principle, that's all. So what do you think? Have you managed to play Space for Sale already? Are you thinking about it? Drop a comment and please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Thanks so much for watching or more listening, and see you on the next one.